It began like a tale you pray is fiction, but every word of this story is true. California, late 1960s. The sun-soaked era of peace, music, and rebellion. But beneath the surface of freedom, something colder lurked. Predator. A hunter who stalked the innocent and turned fear into his signature. On December 20th, 1968, teenagers Betty Lou Jensen and David Faraday parked near Lake Herman Road for what should have been a quiet night together. Their crime was simply being young. Car pulled up beside them. The shooter didn't speak. He didn't threaten. He just fired. David was killed instantly. Betty Lou tried to run only to collapse a short distance away. The killer vanished into the night, leaving behind nothing but bullet shells and questions. The police called it a tragic but isolated event, until it happened again. July 4th, 1969. Independence Day, when fireworks echoed across Vallejo. Darlene Ferrin and Michael Mageau were sitting in a parked car at Blue Rock Springs Park. A stranger approached them wearing dark clothing. He fired multiple times with precision, then walked away. When Michael groaned in pain, the killer returned and fired again. Darlene died. Michael barely survived. This was no coincidence. This was a pattern. 3 weeks later, the real terror began. 3 newspapers, the Vallejo Times-Herald, the San Francisco Examiner, and the San Francisco Chronicle, each received a letter. Neatly written, almost polite, demanding front-page publication. The writer claimed responsibility for the shootings and included details only the killer could know. But the most terrifying part was the cryptic symbol signed at the bottom. A circle crossed with a plus. And a message, "I like killing people because it is so much fun." He also included a cipher, 408 characters long, promising it would reveal his identity. Newspapers printed it. Readers obsessed over it. And families locked their doors. 6 days later, the code was cracked. Not by detectives, but by a local schoolteacher and his wife. The solution was chilling. The killer did not want money. He did not want fame. He wanted slaves for the afterlife. And he warned he would continue killing. Police were pressured to respond publicly. They asked the killer for proof, something unmistakable. And he would soon deliver. September 27th, 1969. Lake Berryessa. A peaceful afternoon. Brian Hartnell and Cecilia Shepard sat by the water, until a man in a dark hood appeared. A chilling symbol, stitched over his chest. The crossed circle. He held a gun. He said he was a fugitive needing money and a car. He tied them both up, but the ropes weren't tight enough. When Brian attempted to loosen them, the man drew a knife. He stabbed them repeatedly, without hesitation. Before leaving, he took out a black marker and wrote on their car door the dates of past killings, and his symbol once again. Cecilia would die from her wounds. Brian lived to describe the monster who attacked them. But only 2 weeks later, the killer grew bolder. In San Francisco, cab driver Paul Stein picked up a passenger in the city's theater district. When the ride ended, the passenger shot him in the head. Calmly, he wiped the scene, and then, with unimaginable arrogance, ripped off part of Stein's shirt and took it with him. This time, there were witnesses. 3 teenagers saw the killer walking away. They described him. Heavyset, glasses, around 40 years old. Police had something to work with, but they made a devastating mistake. The dispatcher incorrectly broadcast the suspect as a black male. Officers unknowingly passed by the real killer face to face and let him disappear into the night. The Zodiac wrote again. He taunted police by enclosing a torn piece of Paul Stein's bloody shirt. His message: they had already spoken to him. And that was only the beginning.
Fear spread like an infection through California. Streets once filled with carefree laughter now echoed with anxiety. The Zodiac Killer wasn't just taking lives, he was taking control. He was no longer satisfied with bullets and knives. He wanted panic. He wanted his name spoken in every home. From the moment his letters hit the newspapers, the Zodiac made sure the world understood something chilling. He believed he was smarter than everyone trying to catch him. He didn't hide in the shadows like other killers. He stepped into broad daylight through every headline, every decoded cipher, every taunt that made the police look helpless. In one letter, He described how easy it would be to shoot out the tire of a school bus and then, as he wrote, pick off the little kiddies as they came bouncing out. With that single sentence, he didn't need to pull the trigger. Fear did the work for him. Parents now watched their children board buses with tremors in their hands. Officers followed the buses, hoping the threat remained just ink on paper. But the Zodiac wasn't done playing. More letters came. Some bragged about the murders he had already committed. Some hinted at new ones. Some demanded that people wear Zodiac buttons, a symbol of his ego, so he could see his power printed across the chests of ordinary citizens. His words were bitter, mocking, gleeful in cruelty. And behind every line was a man who felt untouchable. Police departments from multiple counties clashed, each fighting for leads, each refusing to believe the other had authority. The Zodiac loved this chaos. He watched the detectives chase shadows, break under pressure, and lash out at each other. He had turned the investigation into a circus, and he was the ringmaster. But the police weren't entirely empty-handed. Eventually, one name rose above the rest. A man who seemed to fit too many puzzle pieces to ignore. Arthur Lee Allen. Allen was a disturbed man. Fired from jobs. Caught harming children. Friends reported frightening statements. One even told police that Allen admitted he wanted to become a killer and that he would call himself the Zodiac. He owned the same type of weapons used in the murders. He lived close to the crime scenes. He wore a Zodiac brand watch with the same cross-circle symbol. Detectives thought they finally had their man. Yet, like everything else in this case, the certainty crumbled. Allen's handwriting didn't match. Fingerprints didn't match. A search of his home found twisted fantasies, but nothing conclusive. And so, despite everything, the Zodiac stayed free. But the list of suspects didn't end there. There was Rick Marshall, a man fascinated by old film projectors and cryptography. He matched the sketch. His mannerisms were off. And he lived a life surrounded by secrets. There was Lawrence Kane, a Navy veteran with a brain injury that affected impulse control. He worked near many of the locations where Zodiac letters were mailed. Survivors said his face felt familiar, but they couldn't be certain. There were even whispers about a man connected to a prominent newspaper, someone who could have slipped letters into the system unseen. Investigators chased countless leads that began as promising traps, only to dissolve into nothing. As the years passed, more cases were linked to the Zodiac. Some considered him responsible for murders before he ever made his debut in Vallejo. Others believe he continued long after silence fell in California. A young woman in Riverside found murdered near her college campus. The killer scrawled taunting notes afterward. Some said the handwriting matched the Zodiac's. Some said it was coincidence. The truth remains tangled in uncertainty. Even geography didn't limit suspicion. Nevada, Oregon, Washington. Unexplained killings across the West drew comparisons. If the Zodiac had wandered, he could have left trails that police never connected, patterns overlooked because no one believed a single man could move so freely while maintaining a double life. Maybe that's what he did. Went home to neighbors who thought he was polite. A co-worker who found him quiet and strange, but never dangerous. A family member who dismissed his odd habits. Serial killers don't always wear evil like a costume. Sometimes they look like the man watering his lawn every Sunday. The final confirmed letter attributed to the Zodiac arrived in 1974. After that, silence. No more coded messages. No more threats. No more bragging. It was as if the killer simply removed himself from the world and blended back into ordinary life. But did he stop? Or did we just stop listening? Technology improved. DNA became a sharp blade in criminal investigation. Old letters were tested. Partial genetic profiles formed but never gave a name. Every year, new experts try again. Every year, the evidence whispers, but refuses to shout. Online communities now chase the mystery. Thousands of amateur detectives, cryptographers, and digital researchers dedicate nights to cracking unsolved ciphers. Every time someone claims to finally know who the Zodiac was, doubt quickly follows. Evidence remains thin. Stories conflict. And the truth continues to hide. What makes this case terrifying is the possibility that the Zodiac Killer was never some genius mastermind, but just a man who understood one simple fact: fear lasts longer than violence. He carved his place in history by making sure we would always wonder, who was he really? A monster born from chaos? A broken man craving attention? A manipulator who knew exactly how to make the world tremble? Today, if still alive, the Zodiac would be elderly, fragile, a lifetime behind him. He could be living in a quiet neighborhood right now, his hands shaking not from guilt, but from age. He might shop for groceries, sit in diners, wave politely to strangers, smiling as he hears the familiar words. The Zodiac Killer was never caught, and that's the cruelest truth of all. He didn't just take lives during those dark California nights. He took certainty. He took closure. He forced the world to live in a mystery, he wrote himself. Because until someone proves his name, until the final cipher is solved, the Zodiac Killer is still out there, somewhere, watching the world remember him, and loving every second of it.